Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. I'm so glad that you stopped by to check out this video. Today we are going to be doing some decorative note taking as well as creating some illustrations with Tombow dual brush pens and Prismacolor pencils. If you follow me on Instagram, you have probably seen some of my posts and even a couple reels here and there about my decorative note taking, which at this point is usually sermon notes. I also did this for school notes when I was in high school. It just helps me pay better attention when I do kind of like more decorative notes, and they don't even have to be anything crazy, but just using a couple of different colors depending on like if it's a key point or general information or things like that. So generally I use 2 to 3 colors at most. I used to use more, and I used more like fancier supplies, I guess you could say. Now I mainly just use ballpoint ink pens, and I think these are Artist Loft actually from Michaels, and then I'll use 1 or 2 Tombows, and then right now I'm using stamps because all of these notes I am taking at home, so it's easier to add a little bit more of a creative element when you're not taking all of the supplies everywhere with you. But I don't really have a solid method or reasoning behind how I am doing my notes. I just kind of use different colors for key points like I mentioned earlier, and that's about it. So I haven't really made a full-length video on that ever because it's not really something that I have an explanation for necessarily. I kind of just do whatever seems fun, and it helps me just pay better attention and remember more of what I'm hearing. The day that I was recording this, I figured there would be times where I wasn't really writing anything down and would kind of have breaks from taking notes. So I also brought my sketchbook, my Tombow dual brush pens, and my Prismacolor pencils. And this drawing I had started the day before, so I started it on Sunday for the beginning of the week. This is for my daily drawings that I've been doing. This is the sketchbook that those are all in. And I had a couple weeks where I didn't do daily drawings. I sketched a few times here and there, but they were definitely not consistent or daily, so I'm starting those again this week. This was Sundays. I had done a lot of it, I just didn't add all the details to the buildings, so I was doing that as well while I was listening. And then I also did Monday's drawing since this was recorded on Monday. And then you'll see I end up doing just a few more random little doodles just for fun. So that's pretty much the only reason why I'm doing both of these at the same time, was I knew I would have a little bit of extra time to fill in where I wouldn't be needing to write notes the entire time, and I figured it'd be a good time to be able to finish my daily drawings and start, and I ended up finishing, but start and finish Mondays as well. Since it has been a while since I was doing daily drawings, I decided to kind of stick with more simple things. So for Sunday's drawing, it was just a little mountain town that I didn't have any reference photos for, and I just kind of sketched however I wanted. And then for this one, I looked at a couple inspiration pictures, and then I closed out Pinterest and I sketched a waterfall with some plants growing around it, just from however I wanted to do them, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't copying the inspiration photo too much, and I didn't have one of my own reference photos that I wanted to use for this, so I just kept it pretty simple. I used gray for the rocks, which I don't normally do, and kept it overall a bit lighter and brighter of a palette when I used the Tombows for the base colors. And then you'll see in a minute, if you're not familiar with this style of drawing that I do, I then go over it with the pencils and add more of the texture and the darker colors using those, just to kind of give it some more interest. And it makes it a little bit easier sometimes because the Tombow markers, depending on what you're using them on, can be a little bit harder to blend or to get the right textures. And I just really like the way the pencil works over them and the textures that it creates. So this has definitely become one of my favorite styles. And this is a way that I've done a lot of my daily drawings this year. I really started to enjoy this style the most, probably starting around September of last year. So I haven't really been drawing this specific way for a long time, but it has quickly become a favorite. Normally when I start using a color theme, no matter what I'm using that in, especially for notes, I like to put swatches of all of the colors at the beginning of a section so I easily know what supplies I used and what colors they were. I had forgotten to do that, so I went back and I included the Tombows that I was using, the stamp pad because I have 3 colors in this little color set that I got, and I wanted to make sure I didn't get them mixed up, and then also the ballpoint pens that I was using. I didn't really end up using any of the Tombows other than 992, but I still included them just in case I end up deciding that I do want to use them and include more of those fall themed colors. Something that I probably should have known before now, but I just realized this week, is that if you're listening to something on YouTube that you need to take notes on, I did this specifically on an iPad, but when you click on the see more details, it will pop up the information on the right hand side, and there's a button on there where you can click to show the transcript, which is so helpful if you're taking notes, because sometimes I would scroll back and forth through there to look for a specific piece of information that I missed, or if I missed a number or something like that. So definitely check that out, see if it's an option. I would assume it does it on most devices. I don't think there's space on a phone, but I'd assume you can do it on a desktop as well, or a laptop. So that's definitely something to check out if you are trying to listen to a video and take notes on it. So at this point, I decided to flip back through my sketchbook and see if there were any incomplete drawings or drawings that I wanted to add anything to. So on this one, I had used Artex paint markers, and I just hadn't liked it, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with it, so I decided to just go ahead and use a Pigma Micron to add outlines. And then these drawings I made sometime back in July. I have to check exactly when. I was working at the fair and I had some downtime, so I just was sketching a little bit, and I was trying to do daily drawings in that style at the time, and that's about when I started taking a break from these daily drawings. So I didn't really want to add more to that page right now, so I went back to the duck page that I completed a minute ago and decided to just do a little fall lake and cottage kind of scene. At this point, we were getting ready to have to leave, so I turned off my screen and wasn't listening to anything or taking notes right now, but I just finished up this drawing really fast by adding the last bits of pencil texture, and then here is that spread all finished. Later this same day, so this was still Monday, when we came back, I continued watching the same video I had been watching, and then for this drawing, I wanted to use some different colors. I very rarely use dark colors for the base markers, so I was looking at this picture I took a couple weeks ago in Colorado and used that as the reference, but then I didn't really follow the shapes of the mountains. I just kind of made them my own and used it more for the colors and overall tones of the drawing. From these last couple of drawings, this one especially, as well as the houses by the mountain drawing, I realized that it's a lot of fun with this style also to leave some of the areas that aren't colored in. So in between these rocks, you'll see that I don't fill all of the area in with green. I leave some spots just plain, and then I will fill that in with pencil instead of filling everything in with marker. And it doesn't really make a big difference, but it is kind of fun. It just adds a little bit more contrast between the textures, since all of the background of that area is not marker. And I also ended up filling in some of that space to add shadows for the rocks or different shapes of rocks, and didn't fully rely on the shapes I made with the markers. So I like the textures, and it just makes it a little bit more flexible, where I can kind of change things up a little bit if I want to, while still using the marker as kind of like a sketch or an overall base, and then being able to modify it to fit what feels right as I'm adding in the pencil. I feel like it's really noticeable to me, but you can kind of tell on a lot of these rocks that I didn't have the exact shape sketched out when I did it in the marker, and a lot of the actual shape and definition of the individual rocks was added using the pencil. And that just makes it a little bit easier. You kind of have the base color on there, but then you don't have to stick to it super strictly. So that is another thing that I enjoy about this style. Not even just leaving the empty space, but this style in general of using the marker as the base and then adding texture and detail with the pencil. And I just like how it's really flexible, and you can modify it as you are creating, and it makes it a lot easier than if you have a solid layer of marker everywhere, or if you're trying to shade with marker. I just find it's a little bit easier with the pencils. That is pretty much all for this video, just some simple little doodles, a couple daily drawings, and then a few pages of notes. Thank you so much for stopping by to check out this video, and as always, don't forget to subscribe if you have not already. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.